Good evening, and this is a second attempt of live recording on Purple Power. Tonight we went live earlier, and due to a technical issue, we're trying this yet again. You were able to see us, and we were able to see you, but ultimately the final recording quality had some issues, and this one does as well. Needless to say, it's one of those nights. What's important to understand is that when you're talking about stimulus and when you're talking about a stimulus package, you have to ensure that you have everything correct, and that includes your lighting. Tonight, the eyes are on one man, and that man is Mitch McConnell. Tonight, the question is what would be in the stimulus package? What would be in the second stimulus check? How quickly, how soon, and when would it land? And that is why all eyes are back on Washington. On Monday morning, Mitch McConnell will ostensibly be the number one Republican in the country. And by holding that position, he will be the man that will negotiate your second stimulus package. He understands what he's focused on, and he's understanding the amount of money. And so, what's important as you sit here this evening as part of the Purple Power family is to push, push, push for exactly what you're owed and get it right away. Mitch McConnell will try to do a very quick turnaround for your second stimulus check and stimulus package. It's important that you get the message out very loud and clear because there's a finite period of time. What's important to understand is when the Senate's in session, it's not in session for a very long time. It comes in, it gets their things done, and then it goes back out. And so when President Trump elected not to do executive orders, Mitch McConnell had left a certain sum of money. And that sum of money he was left was $800 billion. On Monday, Mitch McConnell will put the Senate back into session. And on Monday, their first item of business will be a second stimulus check and stimulus package. And by doing that, the eyes and ears of the nation, Wall Street, and you will be on the Senate. The second stimulus package that will be done by the Senate will not mirror what you've seen before, but it'll also not mirror what you've seen on the other side. And that's why this recording is so important tonight. What I want you to do is stay focused on the amount of the stimulus and where the stimulus may actually land. It's important to understand that stimulus, when we're talking about a stimulus package, must ensure that the relief gets to you quick enough and soon enough. And with the stimulus package, the important issue is the items and the routing time. The Senate will go into session next week, and by going into session, the Senate could get this to a bill and a vote by the end of the week. And that word VOTE was why the last video had issues with it because it was in the title. Yeah, it was not election coverage, but someone thought it was. Well, Mitch's VOTE next week will be imperative because the relief needs to go out now. And by getting the relief out now, it's imperative that millions of Americans get it before the holidays. When we talk about stimulus and we talk about stimulus relief, Mitch understands that December 31st is a date at which to get the federal budget guidelines done, but there is not a full run of Senate days in session between next Monday and December. So he wants to get stimulus relief out quickly. He understands the virus is ravaging the country. He understands that lockdowns are ensuing, and he understands 120,000 viruses across the country. In fact, Mitch McConnell was the man who specifically said in recent weeks that he has not gone to the White House for upwards of nearly half a year because he particularly doesn't agree with the policies of the White House on how to combat COVID-19, like mask wearing, things like that. And so Mitch wants this relief to go out. He wants you to have the relief. And so it's important to understand as we sit here today is that Mitch McConnell, in pushing stimulus next week, wants you to get the relief. It's the deal terms that the Purple Power has to step up and be very loud about. And those deal terms are what are so incredibly important. Now, let's go over those deal terms to now. And this is where you got to do your thing, Purple Power. You got to push, push, push. First, FPUC and unemployment and UI and PEUC. Let's go over them. I detailed them on the video right before this. Check at 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Don't miss that taped recording. But I want to go over these details for you. First, he has to extend FPEC. He's expiring in late December. That's the additional weeks that it gives you for unemployment benefits. Second, he has to extend PUA. It's expiring in just a few weeks in late December. A lot of you are dependent upon PUA. By extending those two things, you would have your UI and PUA benefits continued if the pandemic ravages on. Now, let's be very frank. Every day that you hear that's 125,000 new COVID-19 cases, that's 125,000 new people who need to go on unemployment potentially, and those people need assistance. Well, imagine that the programs have expired by the end of the year. An example is like an Uber and Lyft driver. Let's say the Uber and Lyft driver gets COVID-19 on Christmas Eve. There's no PUA existing after New Year's Eve currently. That's why you need FPUC, PFP, FPEUC, and PUA extended past their deadlines. That's the first item. Then we need to do with the number of weekly benefits. The weekly benefits need to stay at least where the problem solvers bill. Mitch McConnell said he would do the problem solvers bill, and it's important he gets that problem solvers bill amount out. That's 450 for 8 weeks and 5 weeks at $600. Ultimately, that was the highest offer ever made, and it's important that those amounts of monies go out to you quickly. You don't want to see Mitch default into his $300 a week. You don't want him, and you don't expect him to go to $600 a week, but $400 a week would be great. Finally, retroactiveness. You need that retroactiveness for FPUC because you're owed it back to July, and you have to ensure that it continues far enough into the future. When we're talking about these dates in the future, you need to understand they need to be February, March, April, because ultimately what's important to understand is that the therapeutics and the vaccines won't be around in December. They won't be around until at least February or March. And what ultimately is important is that you have that relief to carry you into the new year. And that's what's so incredibly important. Now, let's turn to the other items. Well, Mitch wants to give you other relief. You presume the other relief will include rent aid, eviction moratorium. Eviction moratorium was created by the president by executive order. It's expiring in late December. Mortgage forbearance expiring in late December. Student aid forgiveness or repayment of deferment expiring in late December. All those things have to get done right away. This is what's critically important, Purple Power. And that brings us up to PPP, EIDL, and all those type of things. The CDC grant is potentially an unsettled issue because the CDC grant in there, which is hazard pay-ish, may be a big ticket item. I've been warning you over recent days that hazard pay, which is $10,000, I don't see anything for $10,000 land in your bank account. That's a grant. Now, a few $1,000s, sure. EIDL grant $1,000, sure. FP, and then we have the issue of PPP, sure, absolutely all that. Finally, let's turn to stimulus checks. Stimulus checks. That calls into question that $800 billion of CARES Act 1 money. Well, repurpose the money. Repurpose the money because that $800 billion of CARES Act 1 money should be yours. You take that and you figure out how much it is. It comes to one $5,000 check. One $5,000 check that could land in your bank account by repurposing CARES Act 1 money. And that's incredibly great news. It's incredibly great news because you're owed that money. You need that money, and you absolutely have to have it land in your bank account. And if you took that money and had it repurposed by Mitch, ultimately the important point is that the money is not needed as part of the total second stimulus package. Mitch wants to keep the total second stimulus package at 1.5, 1.6, 1.7, 1.4. He doesn't need to use the 500 as part of the second stimulus package. It's separate. What's going on is that Mitch does not want to spend federal money. He doesn't want to run up federal money and increase the debt. Well, he doesn't have to worry about that if he doesn't have to worry about that if the money is actually already used. The $800 billion has already been used. It's just being repurposed. So it doesn't increase the debt, sending it out to the American people. It's the money that's absolutely categorically incredible. And that's what's so important. With that money, it would give you the relief. And could there be more money? Well, let's go to the problem solvers bill. The problem solvers bill says we're going to give you two stimulus checks, one now and one in the spring. If you included that, that would be $7,000 in stimulus checks. But if you don't include it, well, then you take out that money and just start with the $5,000 of stimulus checks and then leave that additional 300 or $600 billion of the problem solvers bill and put it for something else. Put it for another grant. Ultimately, when you look at the problem solvers bill, the provisions in there are enough to get us to at least January or February. But then you would have to have another bill. As Jerome Powell said, we need to get some stimulus out. He said that today. And what's important to understand is by getting some stimulus out, we get moving along. And what's important to understand is that there may not be 120,000 new COVID cases right now. There may be a quarter million. A new statement tonight by Dr. Scott Gottlieb, the former U.S. FDA commissioner under Trump, says we're not doing the right thing. We're building a lot of trouble for the future, and I think it's going to explode in several weeks. You have to really worry about January, and he says 120,000 cases right now is actually really a 500,000 new cases right now. Mitch said, I think it reinforces the argument that we've been making for the last 3 months that something smaller rather than throwing $3 trillion at this issue is more appropriate. It's imperative to get this done. This is a big item. And what's important for I wanted you to understand in this live chat tonight is that ultimately everything is totally different. Everything is totally different. It's no more her way or the highway. It's no more this or that. And I freely want to admit to you that I do think the Temple of Doom is still in a point of denial. I still think that she's shocked she didn't take the Senate. I still think she's shocked that she lost House seats. And I think she still wants to act like we're back 2 weeks ago. We aren't. Steve Mnuchin will not return her calls. Steve Mnuchin will. I'm shocked if he does. Steve Mnuchin will not be the person negotiating for the stimulus package and the $1.8 trillion bill that was offered to her is now poof. It's now gone, and it'll never return. And ultimately, it'll take a few days, but But you'll see press start to hammer. You know what? You had 1.8. Why didn't you take 1.8? Mitch is not going to offer you 1.8. Well, and it's going to hit really hard. If you have questions in today's video, drop them in the comments below. Let me go over some of your questions on screen tonight. When are they going to do these checks? Well, remember, it takes 10 days to receive the checks electronically if you're set up for SSDI, SSI, Social Security benefits after it becomes law. And so Mitch could get it to law within 3 days. Remember, it only takes 3 days to become law, and then you would add 10 days on top of that. So remember, the total processing time of this is about 13 days from the date at which they vote to the date at which it lands in your hands. And so that is incredibly fast. And if you're set up for paper checks, then it would take another week. How many is the check? How much is the check? Of course, that is the big issue. If you use the $850 billion, it would allow for a $5,000 check. What happens if there's a tie in the Senate? By all accounts, it doesn't look like there's going to be a tie in the Senate. Has hazard pay been added? No. Well, hasn't been added? No. There is no bill. So understand, there is no bill. We are starting from scratch. Has hazard pay been added before? No. But is there a bill that is to be added to? No, there is no bill. So it's not that it hasn't been added. There is nothing to add it to. Will they extend unemployment? They have to extend unemployment. That's what I've been talking about. PUA and UI are expiring. They have to expend it. Will Nancy be speaker again? ABC News is reporting tonight that she is the only one that has announced their intention to run for the position, but there's a couple of weeks. It's not being done tomorrow. My reach should run out on October 24th. Tanya says he will be the president. I'm on SSDI. Will I get a check? Yes. If you're an adult dependent, you will still get a check. Will we get retroactive on unemployment? You should, and you need to push for it. Ultimately, a lot of these people want to do retro just a few weeks. They don't want to do several months of it. Remember, your FPUC is retroactive to July. Do you think we'll get a $5,000 check on a second check? I don't know what they're gunning for, if they're hoping to do all this in one big package to carry us to March, or they're hoping to just do something really quick for right now. Problem solvers was only something for now to January. It wasn't past a January problem solvers. Any other questions we have in the room tonight? Let's see if there's anything else coming on in. Does the unemployment numbers reflect those who don't receive benefits due to exhausted funds? So that's a great question. The Thursday number does not. So the Thursday number is dropping because people are running out of UI benefits and they're going on to PUA. And that's why today's number is more indicative. But today's number was good. Today's number was jobs number. And that number was good, but it was based upon stimulus from the last time around. As soon as it passes, how long would it take to receive unemployment? Great question. So that is dependent on your state's routing times. The routing times are faster. Anything that you saw from LWA, I would expect the same routing time for this time. So what's important to understand is I would expect it anywhere from about I would expect it from about 2 weeks to about 6 weeks, depending on how slow or how fast your state is. If this was back in March and you're asking me the question, I would have said 8 weeks for everyone or 12 weeks. How much do you think FPUC will be? I think it will be about 400. I hope it's not 300 and it's not going to be 600. Well, I just started SSI. Will I get my benefits? It's important that you tell IRS where you are. So do a non-filer filing. You are specifically that category that they are of high alert for, not alert, but of concern for. People who newly started benefits this year, you have to do a non-filer filing. You can find it on the IRS's website. Hopefully we get something before Thanksgiving. Turkey sounds better than ramen. Yes, it does. Um, do you think there'll be a problem with the problem solvers call? Do you think there will be the problem solvers bill? They have all said they want to do the problem solvers bill. These are Republicans. They say they want to do it. So ultimately, they may do it because this is what's incredibly important. What do you think is the latest to receive stimulus direct deposit? The latest to receive it after it becomes law. After it becomes law, would be about 13 days. I'm adding 3 days for processing time. Can you tell me what is, oh, I just lost that. Um, oh, thank you. Do I need to do a non-filer? I got a stimulus if you've gotten a stimulus check before, you do not need to do a non-filer. It's when they don't know where you are or where you're located. Are extensions automatic for unemployment? Yes. So that's a great question. If you are on things, then you are covered. When you're not on things, then you're not covered. I saw the comment about the reef. I can't wait to see a reef. When you're not on things is the important thing. So make sure you certify for benefits. For example, certify for benefits this week because you may not have you don't have FPUC because there is no FPUC. And that if they do FPUC and they do a retroactive, it would cover this week and then you would get paid retroactively. So make sure you always certify for your benefits and and all these things do follow automatically. So yeah, that's a great question. How big will the stimulus checks be? That's the number one question. That's the reason I'm doing this recording. I want you to push, 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 and make Mitch and encourage Mitch to use that CARES Act $800 billion that's sitting around and repurpose it. There were two recordings tonight. If you're just joining me, that the first one when I went live, something on the back end ended a little strange. So I'm going to see if it fixes itself in the next hour. But I wanted to make this recording as well. As always, join me tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time and 6:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for the double whammy, the early mornings broadcast. Again, that's 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time every early morning on LALATE. As always, stay informed, stay smiling. Don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and stay focused, stay motivated, and stay with LA for more.